Morning. Good morning and welcome to this event with Ascelia Pharma. With me today I have the CEO Magnus Corfitzen, and today's topic is the recently announced update on headline data from the Sparkle study. I would like to welcome the audience as well, and as always you can post your questions just below the video window, and I will pass them on to Magnus during the presentation. So with that said, welcome Magnus, and please carry on.
Yeah, thank you, Klaus, and thank you everybody for joining to hear on the update on the revelation of Sparkle. So I'll be making certain forward-looking statements, but just briefly to talk about what we do at Ascelia. Our business model is to identify, develop, and commercialize novel drugs that address unmet medical needs for people who have rare cancer conditions. And our lead program is Orviglance, and that's what we're going to focus the update today on. So Orviglance is a diagnostic drug or contrast agent, which is given to patients before they undergo an MRI scanning procedure of the liver. And Orviglance is focused on patients with renal disease, severe renal disease, because they have risk of potentially fatal side effects from the currently available products. So this commercial opportunity is $800 million globally on an annual basis. So a very significant opportunity where Orviglance is going to be first in class and the only product really targeting this patient population. We have completed and have results from 8 different clinical phase 1 and 2 studies. So a very comprehensive documentation for the efficacy and the safety profile of Orviglance. We have completed patient enrollment in the Sparkle study, the pivotal phase 3 study. That was patient enrollment was completed earlier this year, February, March. We have reported that adverse events from the Sparkle study were in line with what we've seen in previous studies, which we think is a very good piece of news. No surprises. What we will talk about today is that we still don't have the readout of the efficacy of the study, which is obviously a disappointment. So we were expecting to have it during the middle of the summer, but something went wrong, and that's what I'm going to talk about. And then I will also talk about how we're going to fix it and get the results from the study so we can move Orviglance to the patients. So a brief recap on the Sparkle study. So all the patients, the 85 patients in this study, will have a scanning procedure of the liver without Orviglance, and then they will receive Orviglance and then be having an imaging procedure with Orviglance. And what will be measured is actually taking the pictures without Orviglance and comparing with the combined information from without and with Orviglance. And we're measuring on the primary endpoint is composed of 2 different parameters. So border delineation. So when they see a sort of a black spot on the liver, which is abnormal tissue, then they need to assess the border delineation and the lesion contrast. So what is the change in brightness between abnormal tissue and healthy tissue? That assessment is made individually by 3 readers, 3 radiologists who are trained in the protocol so that they understand how the scoring system works and what they need to measure, etc. The study is successful if 2 out of the 3 readers score statistical significance. So what we reported early August was that we could not really get a result from the evaluation that had been going on since patients were enrolled, were completed. So we reported that 2 readers had high level of intra-reader variability. And so what does that mean? So intra-reader variability means that the reader does not agree with themselves. So the way to test for this, as we have done and followed guidance from FDA and others, is that we take some of the images from the patients and we put into the reading database twice. So the readers will be exposed to these images 2 times, and we need to compare, is the scoring similar or roughly similar? I mean, there will always be an expectation that there will be some variability, but what we saw was very high variability. And when it's very high, then we don't know which one is really the true value, the high or the low one. And therefore, when we have unreliable scoring because of this intra-reader variability, we cannot conclude anything on the effect. So you could say a comparison that I think is very similar is that if we were, instead of having radiologists doing the evaluation of the images, if it was a blood sample that was analyzed in a lab with equipment, and we found out afterwards that the lab equipment was highly inaccurate, gave sort of very random results, then we could not conclude anything on the blood samples. We would need to redo the blood sampling, the blood analysis with a calibrated and validated equipment, and then we could conclude. Essentially, this is exactly the same. The unfortunate complication is that it's a much more significant undertaking to select radiologists, train them according to the protocol, and have them go through all the images, because it is a large number of images. So the good thing here is that all the clinical data is in the database. We have collected the data that we need. We don't need to do another study or recruit more patients. Everything is in the database, but we need to have somebody, 3 readers, evaluate the images in the database. Then we have the results. So last week we communicated that we expect to have the results of the new reevaluation of the images in May 2024, May next year. We also communicated that we have the current financing that we have in the company is sufficient to bring us into the third quarter, which means that we will be able to get the results from the Sparkle study before we run out of money. Obviously, this is tight, but we're really pleased that the current funding allows us to complete the reevaluation. And to get there, we have unfortunately been forced to say goodbye to a lot of very good colleagues. And we've also made significant cost reductions on activities that are not related to the reevaluation. But the key takeaway is we expect to have the results in May, and we have the funding that we need to get the results. So what we also communicated is that was an update on the commercial strategy. The commercial strategy has, until last week, so to speak, been that we want to find a commercial partner outside the US, and we will utilize their team and their infrastructure, their investments to bring the product to patients. In the US, we want to build our own commercial team, work with with partners outsourcing a number of operations that are not core, and that's how we could maximize the value. What we decided last week and communicated last week was that we are, you could say, increasing the strategic flexibility, if you will. So we still have the opportunity to go direct in the US, but it could also be that we want to have a partnership in the US, commercial partnership in the US, or you could say even a global partnership. So that's also a strategic opportunity. Our focus is to maximize the value to shareholders, and we think this is very much in line with that objective. So to summarize, before moving into the questions, is the objective for this year continues to be bringing Orviglance forward to patients. We have the completed patient enrollment in March. Last week we communicated the plan with the timeline for getting the results in May next year, and also that we have the financial capacity to go all the way through the reading process. Today I'm not talking very much about Oncoral or other assets, but what we think is also extremely interesting, where we have an open IND and are ready to start a phase 2, but right now that is obviously not prioritized in our budgets. So with that brief update, I'd be happy to move into questions.
Thanks a lot, Magnus, and really nice to get an update on your new commercial strategy as well. So Magnus, in relation to the reevaluation, what have changed from early August and until your press release last week, and have FDA been involved in this process, so you can set a date around May next year?
Yeah, so what happened, this is a material event, what we communicated in early August. And therefore, as a publicly traded company, we need to communicate it as soon as possible. So obviously, we need to understand the data before we can communicate, because we need to understand what we're saying basically, and make sure we say the right thing. After communicating that, what we said in early August was that we are very focused on how quickly we can get the re-evaluation completed and with right quality. We've been going through every single step in the evaluation process, understanding which areas could we improve, what could be the causes of this high level of inter-reader variability that have been the issue. And we've identified a number of things where we think here it makes very good sense to make things different when we do this re-evaluation. We're also working extensively with key opinion leaders that are very supportive in helping us design this in an even better way. We're also talking to other companies that have experienced this in the past. Obviously, this is we need to communicate because we're a publicly traded company. This is our lead asset. If you are a very big company, maybe it's not material, and then you don't need to put out a press release that you have this issue. Or if you're a privately held company, so we know other drugs that have been having this issue, having done a re-evaluation of the data, and these products are today on the market and are doing well. So I think that it's been a very, very intense period, of course, and the team has been extremely diligent and effective in doing the analysis, putting the plan together with our CRO and other supportive stakeholders in the process to make sure we can get the results in May.
Thanks a lot. So when you evaluate this process and you find the pro and cons, is there anything there you can elaborate on? Because you mentioned for me the last time that, of course, you're not going to use the same readers again.
Yeah,
you're going to find new readers, and you also told us last time that you will do. You put a lot of effort. You already did that to educate them so they know what to look for. Because this process, as you mentioned in the beginning, it's not easy when you have a lot of images. Could you elaborate a little more on that, if possible?
Yeah. So what we've been looking into is I think we did things in a good way from in the first go, but there are certainly things that we can improve that we have identified now in, you could say, hindsight and always when doing the exact same approach when things have failed in the first instance is not really a rational way. Then you need to look for ways to improve and minimize risk, and that's what we've been doing. Both in you would say we're looking at obviously selecting new readers. If we were using some of the same readers, then we would risk introducing a bias, and we don't want to do that to, you would say, contaminate the data and make them less credible in a regulatory context. So new readers, and we already come a good deal in that process. But also on the training material, we doing expanding on that. But it's to make sure, and I think of course we're using also in the first instance experienced radiologists who've seen a liver many times. But the way they look at the liver when they evaluate a clinical study like Sparkle or any other clinical study is a little bit different from what they do in routine clinical practice. They measure different things. It's some different parameters that are important in clinical practice than it is when you need to document and score in a regulatory phase 3 program. And that's what the training is all about, to make sure that they evaluate in the way that the FDA or the EMA would like to see the evaluation. And we need to make sure that they do that in a consistent way. And that's looking at all kinds of ways to minimize risk that they are not consistent.
Okay. Have FDA been involved in this reevaluation process?
No, I mean it's always the company who is doing that. Obviously, we are looking at what is the the situation with the FDA, and we've said we want to have a dialogue with the FDA. So I think we are of course adhering to, you would say, guidelines and having that kind of interaction, but it doesn't work in the way where the FDA is having sort of they're not involved in the evaluation process at all. I mean, their job is to provide the guidance, and then they are to evaluate the applications in the end.
Yeah, the final outcome. Thanks a lot. And so how far are we in this re-evaluation process? Because now you sent out a statement last week, so of course you did all the evaluation of what went wrong and what went the right way. Are you starting up right away, or where are we in the process, Magnus?
Yeah, I mean, we basically started up on the day or the day after the press release in early August with the planning, and then with the planning was in place, and the financial analysis in terms of the financial runway was in place last week when we communicated. And then there are lots of steps, but there are lots of preparation steps: selecting the readers, training them, validating the training, all those steps before they can start doing the actual reading of the images, which will. But it's really important to make sure that that the quality is at the right level all the way throughout in every single step of the process, and that's what we're extremely focused on. So we're making progress towards the May timeline according to the plan. Thanks a lot.
There's a question here about finances and how to secure funding, and you have probably looked at every stone in the company because the cut you did was major, and you mentioned that before. Have you ever considered selling an candidate like Oncorel in this process? Can you elaborate on that?
Not specifically, but I would say we're looking at all sources of gaining access to capital, and that's an ongoing. It's not just after the revelation, but it's, you could say, part of the ongoing management and leadership of a biotech company that is not, especially one that is not revenue generating. So we need to look for all sources of capital, and I think especially in the situation we're in now, then all options ought to be on the table.
Of course. And if we move a little further into the commercialization strategy, so the strategy is well, you extended the strategy in US, where you look for a partner together with Ascelia taking the product to the market. So if we assume a positive outcome of the re-evaluation process, what kind of partner are you looking for? Are you looking for a partner now that can cover maybe parts of US and then Europe as well? Or are you looking for a partner in Europe, rest of the world, and then a partner in US alone?
I would say all of the above. Okay. So we want to make sure that we maximize the value, and we maximize the value by having partners in relevant geographies that are capable of doing a good job, and those capabilities and the skill sets may be a little different in different parts of the world. So I mean, kind of variants. Different companies may be stronger in certain parts of the world than others. So we are looking at this. I mean, from a structure perspective, a global deal would be the simplest. But may not necessarily be the most value creating for Ascelia. It could also be regional deals. But I mean, it's that's what the future will sort of will tell us how things develop.
Good, Magnus. If there's any more questions out there, please post your questions, and I will put them forward to Magnus. Don't think we have more questions coming in right now. Magnus, what is the next major milestone we should look at besides the Q3 report, which is just around the corner? Is there anything investors should be aware of?
No, I mean the biggest milestone by far is completing and getting the revelation in place. And as we progress, there may be things that happen before May, but we have not guided to any specific events that will happen apart from the financial reports.
Is it possible that that you can see a shorter timeline than the one you have press released?
I mean, everything is possible, but I would say it's an ambitious timeline. We think we can deliver on that one, but I mean, it's and our ambition is to do it as fast as possible. It's not there's no waiting time, but it's an ambitious timeline, as it should be.
Good. Thanks.
But we also feel that we can deliver on it. So it's not that it's an unrealistic timeline. So unless there certain things happen that screw everything up, then we should be able to deliver and have results no later than May.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I don't think there's more questions, Magnus. So I think we will finish the event for today, and I'm really happy we could get an update on the commercial strategy and on the headline for the Sparkle Studio. And of course, you will be back probably with the Q2 report soon. So with that said, I would like to first of all thank the audience for all the good questions. I would like to thank you, Magnus, as always, to participate in events with us. And with that said, enjoy your day, everybody.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks a lot.